Welcome to Folktales Africa. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications because it will mean the whole world to me. Today's story will shock you, inspire you, and remind you that God's timing is always perfect. Brace yourself for a tale of injustice, resilience, and divine justice. Let's get right into it. The rain hammered against the windows of Unity Bank's executive conference room as Messenger 4 adjusted her crisp navy blazer and opened the thick manila folder before her. Across the mahogany table sat Chief Okonkwo, once proud and arrogant, now sweating despite the air conditioning, his expensive suit unable to hide the desperation in his eyes. Mrs. Ejiofor, he stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. Surely, we can work something out. I've been banking with Unity Bank for 15 years. I have assets, properties. Mercy looked up from the document, her eyes calm but steely. Chief Okonkwo, according to our records, you have defaulted on your loan payments for 8 consecutive months. The total amount owed is 45 million naira, including penalties and interest. Chief Okonkwo's hands trembled as he reached for his handkerchief. But I am expecting a large payment next month. My tenants, my properties. Your properties, Mercy interrupted, her voice carrying a weight that made everyone in the room shift uncomfortably. Are the very reason we are here today. You see, Chief, banks don't just lend money. We investigate character. We look at how people treat others when they think no one is watching. The silence in the room was deafening. Chief Okonkwo's lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear, but the man seemed frozen, staring at Mercy as if she had seen a ghost. You don't remember me, do you? Mercy asked, setting down her pen with deliberate precision. December 24th, 2021, Christmas Eve. A single mother with a sick child, begging for just one more week to pay rent. Do you remember what you said to her? Chief Okonkwo's face went pale. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You said, if you can't pay, you can't stay. Christmas or no Christmas, I have a business to run. Mercy's voice was steady, professional, but those who knew her could hear the steel beneath the silk. You threw her and her fevering child into the street at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve. In the rain. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Chief Okonkwo's lawyer looked confused, frantically shuffling through papers as if they might contain an escape route. That woman, Mercy continued, standing slowly, was me, and that sick child was my daughter, Chioma. Today, Chief Okonkwo, I am not begging. I am foreclosing on every single property you own. But this story didn't start that day in the boardroom. It started 3 years earlier when Messenger 4 was a different woman entirely. Let me tell you how a heartless landlord's cruelty transformed a struggling single mother into his worst nightmare. 3 years earlier, Messenger 4 sat in the dim glow of her laptop screen, her fingers dancing across the keyboard despite the exhaustion that weighed down her shoulders like a heavy blanket. It was 2 a.m. and the one-bedroom apartment she shared with her 8-year-old daughter, Chioma, in Surulere, Lagos, was silent except for the gentle hum of the fan and her daughter's soft breathing from the bed they shared. Mercy worked as a freelance accountant, taking any job she could find, bookkeeping for small businesses, tax preparation, financial consulting for startups that paid in promises more than cash. By day, she was a devoted mother, walking Chioma to school, helping with homework, and making sure her daughter never felt the weight of their financial struggles. By night, she was a warrior, fighting to build a better life one client at a time. The apartment was small but clean, every corner maximized for efficiency. Mercy had painted the walls herself in cheerful yellow, hung inspirational quotes written in her own careful handwriting, and filled every available space with books, accounting textbooks, business magazines, and Chioma storybooks. It wasn't much, but it was home. "Mommy, you're working too late again," came a sleepy voice from the bed. Mercy turned to see Chioma rubbing her eyes, her small face illuminated by the laptop's glow. At 8 years old, Chioma had inherited her mother's sharp mind and gentle heart, but she had also inherited the responsibility of worrying about things no child should have to think about. "Just finishing up some work, my love," Mercy whispered, closing the laptop. "Go back to sleep. Tomorrow is Saturday, remember. We're going to the park." Chioma smiled, her eyes already drifting closed. "Will we have money for ice cream?" The question was innocent, but it pierced Mercy's heart like a needle. She forced a smile. "Of course, baby. Mommy always finds a way." As Chioma drifted back to sleep, Mercy reopened her laptop and looked at her bank balance. 8,500 naira. Rent was due in a week. 85,000 naira for their small apartment in Chief Okonkwo's building. She had been working toward a big contract with a medium-sized company, but they kept delaying the payment. Next week, they said, just need approval from the board. Mercy pulled out her notebook, the one where she tracked every expense, every payment, every hope. She wrote in neat columns, calculating and recalculating, trying to make the numbers work. Food, 15,000 naira. Transport, 5,000 naira. Chairman's school fees, 25,000 naira. Medical expenses, 10,000 naira. Rent, 85,000 naira. She needed 140,000 naira to get through the month comfortably, but she had less than 9,000 naira to her name. But Mercy didn't cry. She had learned that tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she opened her laptop again and began typing another proposal to a potential client. Somewhere in the city, someone needed her skills. Someone would pay for what she was worth. She just had to keep looking, keep working, keep believing. Chief Okonkwo was a man who measured his worth by the fear he inspired in others. At 58, he owned 12 properties across Lagos, 3 luxury cars, and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in business. His office in Victoria Island was a shrine to his success. Awards from real estate associations, photos with politicians, and a massive mahogany desk that made visitors feel small and insignificant. He had built his empire through a simple philosophy: squeeze every penny from every opportunity and never let emotion interfere with profits. Tenants weren't people to him. They were sources of revenue. If they couldn't pay, they had to go. It was that simple. "Sir, we have a problem," said Kemi, his property manager, as she entered his office that Monday morning. She was a thin woman in her 30s who had learned to deliver bad news quickly and efficiently. Chief Okonkwo didn't look up from his newspaper. "What kind of problem?" The tenant in flat 3B in the Surulere property, Mercy Ejiofor, she's asking for an extension on her rent. Says she's expecting a big payment next week. Now Chief Nwosu looked up, his eyes narrowing. How much does she owe? Nothing yet, sir. Rent isn't due until Friday, but she's calling to ask for an extension until the following Tuesday. Chief Nwosu laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. She's asking for an extension before she is even late. These people have no shame. What's her story? Kemi consulted her tablet. Single mother, one child. She has been a good tenant for 2 years. Never missed a payment. Works as a freelance accountant. And now she's begging for extensions. Chief Nwosu shook his head dismissively. You know what this means, Kemi? It means she is getting desperate. Desperate people make bad tenants. They start thinking they can negotiate with me. Sir, she has always paid on time before. Before doesn't matter. Now matters. If she can't pay by Friday, she needs to find somewhere else to live. I don't run a charity, Kemi. I run a business. Kemi shifted uncomfortably. Sir, she has a young daughter and Christmas is coming. Chief Nwosu's voice turned cold. Christmas is not my problem. My mortgage payments don't stop for Christmas. My car payments don't stop for Christmas. Why should my rent collection stop for Christmas? He stood up, straightening his imported tie. Call her back. Tell her rent is due Friday by 6 p.m. Not 6:01. Not Saturday morning. Friday by 6 p.m. If she can't pay, she needs to start packing. Kemi nodded reluctantly. Yes, sir. And Kemi, Chief Nwosu's voice carried a warning. Don't let her sub-story affect your judgment. The moment you start feeling sorry for tenants, you stop being effective. These people smell weakness like vultures smell death. As Kemi left the office, Chief Nwosu returned to his newspaper, already forgetting about Mercy Ejiofor. To him, she was just another number in his ledger, another source of revenue to be optimized. He had no idea that his cold-hearted decision would come back to haunt him in ways he never imagined. Friday arrived with the weight of an executioner's axe. Mercy had spent the entire week making phone calls, sending emails, and visiting potential clients. The big contract she was waiting for remained frustratingly out of reach. Next week, they kept saying, just need final approval. She sat in a small apartment, staring at her phone as if willing it to ring with good news. The clock on the wall read 4:30 p.m. In 90 minutes, she would officially be late on rent for the first time in her life. Choma was at her friend's house, blissfully unaware of the crisis unfolding. Mercy had made sure of that. Children, she believed, should be allowed to be children for as long as possible. At 5:45 p.m., Mercy made a decision that went against every instinct in her body. She would go to Chief Nwosu's office and ask for an extension face to face. Surely, if he could see her as a human being, if he could understand that she was just asking for a few more days, he would show mercy. She dressed carefully in her one good business suit, a navy blue ensemble she had bought 3 years ago for job interviews. It was showing its age, but it was clean and professional. She practiced her speech in the mirror, trying to strike the right balance between confidence and humility. Chief Nwosu's office building in Victoria Island was a gleaming monument to capitalism. Mercy felt small as she walked through the marble lobby, her worn heels clicking against the polished floor. The security guard eyed her suspiciously as if poverty might be contagious. "I am here to see Chief Nwosu," she told the receptionist, a young woman with perfectly painted nails and an expression of barely concealed disdain. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I am one of his tenants. It is urgent." The receptionist looked her up and down, taking in the slightly worn suit and the determination in Mercy's eyes. "He is very busy. You will have to wait." Mercy waited for 45 minutes in the lobby, watching important-looking people in expensive suits walk in and out. Each time someone emerged from the elevator, she hoped it would be her turn. Each time, she was disappointed. Finally, at 7:15 p.m., the receptionist called her name. "Chief Nwosu will see you now, but he only has 5 minutes." Mercy's heart pounded as she rode the elevator to the 15th floor. The doors opened to reveal a palatial office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos Island. Chief Nwosu sat behind his massive desk, like a king on his throne, not bothering to look up when she entered. "You are late," he said without preamble. "Rent was due at 6 p.m. "Yes, sir. I know. That's why I am here. I wanted to explain." "There is nothing to explain. You either have my money or you don't. Which is it?" Mercy took a deep breath. "Sir, I don't have it today, but I am expecting a large payment next Tuesday. I have been working on this contract for months and—" "Tuesday." Chief Nwosu finally looked up, his eyes cold and calculating. "That is 4 days late." "Yes, sir. I know it is not ideal, but Mrs. Ejiofor, let me explain something to you." Chief Nwosu stood up, his presence filling the room like a dark cloud. "I have 12 properties. If I let one tenant pay late, then all my tenants will want to pay late. If all my tenants pay late, then I can't pay my own bills. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir, but this is just one time. I have never been late before." "Never been late before doesn't pay my mortgage this month." He walked around the desk, looming over her like a mountain. "You seem like a nice woman, Mrs. Ejiofor, but nice doesn't pay rent. Good intentions don't pay rent. Money pays rent." Mercy felt her carefully prepared speech crumbling. "Sir, I have a daughter. She's only 8 years old. I just need a few more days." "Your daughter is not my responsibility. Your problems are not my responsibility. My responsibility is to collect rent from my tenants on time. Every time. Please, sir, it is almost Christmas. Surely you can show some compassion." Chief Nwosu's expression hardened. "Christmas is a holiday, Mrs. Ejiofor. It is not a business strategy. My bills don't stop for Christmas. My expenses don't stop for Christmas. Why should my income stop for Christmas?" Mercy felt tears threatening, but she forced them back. "What if I paid half now and half on Tuesday?" "What half? You just said you don't have the money." I could borrow it from friends, family." "If you could borrow it, you would have done so already. You are here because you have nowhere else to turn." Chief Nwosu returned to his desk, the conversation clearly over in his mind. Kemi will be by your apartment tomorrow morning with an eviction notice. You have 48 hours to vacate. 48 hours? But sir, that is Christmas Eve. Chief Nwosu shrugged. Then you will have to find somewhere else to spend Christmas. Mercy stood there for a moment, stunned by the casual cruelty of his words. This man was evicting a mother and child on Christmas Eve without a second thought. She had known he was a tough businessman, but she hadn't expected this level of heartlessness. Sir, please reconsider. I am begging you. Just until Tuesday. 4 days. Chief Nwosu didn't even look up from his papers. Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily. Have a good evening, Mrs. Ejiofor. As Mercy walked back through the marble lobby, her reflection in the polished floor looked distorted, broken. She had never felt so small, so powerless, so utterly defeated. But as she stepped out into the Lagos night, something hardened inside her. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about dignity, about justice, about the kind of world she wanted her daughter to grow up in. She didn't know it yet, but Chief Nwosu had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The next morning, Kemi arrived at Mercy's apartment at 9 a.m. sharp, holding an eviction notice like a weapon. She knocked on the door with the enthusiasm of someone performing a root canal. Mrs. Ejiofor, I am here about the eviction notice. Mercy opened the door, still in a nightgown, her eyes red from a sleepless night. Behind her, Chema sat at a small dining table, eating cereal and working on a Christmas card for her teacher. Mommy, who is at the door? Chema called out. Just a friend from work, baby. Keep eating your breakfast. Mercy stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Please, Kemi, I know you're just doing your job, but surely there is something we can do. Kemi looked uncomfortable. She had been Chief Nwosu's property manager for 5 years, and she had delivered dozens of eviction notices. But something about this felt different. Mercy wasn't a deadbeat tenant trying to game the system. She was a good woman in a bad situation. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ejiofor. I really am. But Chief Nwosu was very clear. 48 hours. It is Christmas Eve tomorrow, Kemi. Where am I supposed to take my daughter? Kemi's resolve wavered. Maybe you could call some relatives, friends. I've already tried everyone. My parents died in a car accident 6 years ago. I don't have any siblings, and my friends are all struggling just like me. The two women stood in the narrow hallway, the weight of the situation settling between them like a stone. What about women's shelters? Kemi suggested weakly. On Christmas Eve, with a day's notice, Mercy's voice cracked. Kemi, I'm not asking for charity. I am asking for basic human decency. 4 days, that's all I need. Kemi looked at the eviction notice in her hands, then at the door, behind which an 8-year-old girl was innocently eating breakfast and making Christmas cards. I'll talk to him again, Kemi said finally. Maybe if I explain the situation. I already explained the situation. He doesn't care. He is not a monster, Mrs. Ejiofor. He is just focused on business. Mercy laughed bitterly. Any man who would throw a child into the streets on Christmas Eve is a monster, Kemi. The only difference is that this monster wears expensive suit. That evening, Kemi sat in Chief Nwosu's office, watching him count the day's rent collections. The money was stacked in neat piles on his desk. 50,000 naira here, 75,000 naira there. More money than Mercy made in 2 months. Sir, about Mrs. Ejiofor, what about her? She's a good woman, sir. She is not trying to cheat you. She is just having a bad time. Chief Nwosu didn't look up from his counting. Good women pay their rent on time, Kemi. But sir, she has a young daughter and it is Christmas. How many times do I have to explain this to you? Chief Nwosu's voice carried a warning. Christmas is not my problem. If Mrs. Ejiofor cared about her daughter, she would have made sure she could pay her rent. Sir, with respect, you have 12 properties. You make more money in a month than she makes in a year. Will this really hurt you to show some compassion? Chief Nwosu finally looked up, his eyes dangerous. Kemi, I'm beginning to think you are not suited for this job. My compassion is reserved for people who earn it. Mrs. Ejiofor has earned nothing but an eviction notice. But sir, the discussion is over. If Mrs. Ejiofor is not out by tomorrow night, call the police. I don't care if it is Christmas, New Year's or the second coming. Business is business. Kemi left the office feeling sick to her stomach. She had worked for difficult bosses before, but Chief Nwosu's casual cruelty was something new. She thought about quitting, but she had her own rent to pay, her own family to feed. Sometimes she reflected bitterly. The system trapped everyone. Christmas Eve arrived grey and drizzling, as if the sky itself was weeping for what was about to happen. Mercy had spent the night packing their few belongings into 2 suitcases and a handful of cardboard boxes. She moved quietly, trying not to wake Chioma, who was sleeping peacefully in their shared bed. At 7 a.m., Mercy's phone rang. It was the client she had been waiting for. Mrs. Ejiofor, this is James from Pinnacle Industries. I have good news and bad news. Mercy's heart raised. What's the good news? The good news is that the board approved your contract. The bad news is that we can't process payment until after the holidays. Our finance department is closed until January 3rd. Mercy felt the world spinning around her. January 3rd? But you said it will be this week. I know, and I am sorry, but it is Christmas. You know, everyone is on holiday. After hanging up, Mercy sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Quiet, desperate sobs that shook her whole body. She had done everything right. She had worked harder than anyone she knew. She had been honest, reliable, and professional. And still, she was about to lose everything. Mommy, why are you crying? Mercy looked up to see Chioma standing in the doorway. Her small face creased with worry. At 8 years old, she was already too familiar with her mother's tears. I'm not crying, baby. I'm just tired. Chioma climbed onto the bed and wrapped her small arms around her mother. Are we moving today? Mercy had been dreading this conversation. Yes, sweetheart. We have to find a new place to live. Because we don't have enough money, The simple question from her daughter's lips was like a knife to Mercy's heart. It is complicated, darling. Is it because of the mean man who owns the house? Mercy was startled. What do you know about the mean man? I heard you talking to Miss Kemi yesterday. You said he was a monster. Mercy pulled her daughter closer. I shouldn't have said that. That wasn't nice. But he is making us live on Christmas. Isn't he mean? Out of the mouth of babes, Mercy thought. Her 8-year-old daughter had a clearer sense of right and wrong than a grown man with 12 properties. Yes, baby, he is being very mean, but sometimes mean people win, and good people have to be strong and keep trying. Will we have Christmas? Mercy forced a smile. Of course we will have Christmas. Christmas isn't about where you are. It is about being together. At 11 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Mercy opened it to find Kemi standing there with 2 police officers and a locksmith. The eviction was official now. Mrs. Ejiofor, one of the officers said, "We are here to supervise the eviction process. Do you need help moving your belongings?" Mercy looked at the officers, young men, probably with families of their own, and saw sympathy in their eyes. They didn't want to be there any more than she wanted to be there. "I just need a few more minutes," she said. "Take your time, ma'am." Mercy gathered the last of their belongings while Chioma sat on the bed, clutching her favorite stud animal, a one teddy bear named Mr. Brown. The apartment looked so empty now, stripped of the small touches that had made it home. "Mommy, where are we going to live?" "I don't know yet, baby, but we'll figure it out." As they walked out of the apartment for the last time, Mercy turned back to look at the place where she had worked so hard to build a life for her daughter. The yellow walls she had painted herself, the bookshelves she had assembled from IKEA boxes, the small kitchen where she had cooked hundreds of meals with love and hope. "I'll be back," she whispered to herself. "Someday, somehow, I will be back." Outside, the rain was getting heavier. Mercy stood on the sidewalk with her daughter and their meager belongings, watching the locksmith change the locks on what had been their home just minutes before. Other tenants in the building watched from their windows, some with pity, others with relief that it wasn't them. "Mrs. Ejiofor," Kemi said quietly, "I am really sorry about this." Mercy looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "No, you are not. If you were really sorry, you would have found a way to stop it." Kemi flinched as if she had been slapped. "I tried to talk to him." "You tried to talk to him. You didn't try to help me. There is a difference." As Kemi walked away, Mercy pulled out her phone and called the one person she had been avoiding. Her former neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, who lived in a tiny one-room apartment in Mushin. "Mrs. Johnson, it is Mercy. I hate to ask, but could Chioma and I stay with you for a few days, just until I find something else?" Mrs. Johnson, a widow in her 60s who survived on a small pension, didn't hesitate. "Of course, my dear. Come right over." As they waited for a taxi, Chioma looked up at her mother. "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to help people so they don't have to be sad like you." Mercy hugged her daughter tighter. "You're already rich, baby. You have a kind heart. That's the most valuable thing in the world. But as they drove away from the only home Chioma had ever known, Mercy made a silent promise. She would never be this powerless again. Whatever it took, however long it took, she would make sure that no one could ever throw her and her daughter into the street again. She didn't know it yet, but that promise would change everything. The months that followed were the darkest of Mercy's life. Living in Mrs. Johnson's one-room apartment with her daughter felt like a failure every morning when she woke up, but she channeled that shame into determination. The big contract from Pinnacle Industries finally came through in January, giving her enough money to find a small apartment in Mushi. Not ideal, but it was theirs. More importantly, it gave her the capital to make some changes in her life. Mercy enrolled in an online MBA program, studying at night after Chioma went to sleep. She began networking aggressively, attending every business event she could find. Even when she had to borrow money for transport, she volunteered to do pro bono work for startups, building relationships and proving her worth. By September 2022, she had landed a position as a senior financial analyst at Kedin Trust Bank. It wasn't her dream job, but it was a start. She worked harder than anyone else in the office, staying late, taking on extra projects, and slowly building a reputation as someone who got results. As supervisor, Mr. Adebayo noticed her dedication. "Mercy, I have never seen anyone work as hard as you do. What drives you?" "I have a daughter, sir, and I made her a promise that we would never be helpless again." By December 2022, exactly 1 year after the eviction, Mercy had been promoted to assistant manager. The salary increase allowed her to move to a better apartment in Ikeja, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was building something solid. But she never forgot Chief Nwosu. Sometimes, late at night, she would think about that Christmas Eve, about the casual cruelty in his voice when he said, "Christmas is not my problem." She would remember the rain, the fear in Chioma's eyes, the feeling of being utterly powerless. In March 2023, Mercy made another leap. She applied for a position at Unity Bank, one of the fastest growing banks in Nigeria, known for its aggressive expansion and innovative financial products. The position was branch manager for commercial lending, a role that would put her in charge of millions of naira in loan decisions. The interview process was rigorous. 3 rounds of interviews, psychological assessments, and background checks. But Mercy's combination of technical expertise, work ethic, and quiet intensity impressed everyone she met. Mrs. Ejiofor said the regional director during her final interview, "Why do you want to work in commercial lending?" Mercy chose her words carefully. "Because I believe that access to capital can change lives, sir. But I also believe that the power to grant or deny that access comes with tremendous responsibility. I want to make sure that power is used wisely." In May 2023, Mercy Ejiofor was appointed branch manager for commercial lending at Unity Bank's Victoria Island branch. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her office was less than 3 blocks from Chief Nwosu's building. On her first day, as she sat behind her new desk in her new office, Mercy thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a one-room apartment in Mushin to a corner office in Victoria Island, from begging for extensions to making decisions about millions of naira in loans. She pulled out her phone and called Chioma, who was now 10 years old and thriving in her new school. "Mommy, how is your new job?" "It's perfect, baby. Absolutely perfect." "Are you happy?" Mercy looked out her window at the Lagos skyline, thinking about the people in the city who were struggling just like she had struggled. "I'm getting there, sweetheart. I am getting there." What Mercy didn't know was that Chief Nwosu was about to make a decision that would bring their paths crashing together once again. By October 2023, Chief Nwosu's empire was crumbling, though he was too proud to admit it. The real estate market in Lagos had taken a downturn. Several of his major tenants had defaulted, and his expensive lifestyle was outpacing his income. He had been living off credit for months, juggling payments and hoping for a miracle. When his accountant showed him the numbers, the reality was stark. He needed 45 million naira to stay afloat. Without it, he would lose everything: the properties, the cars, the lifestyle that defined him. "Chief, you need to consider selling some properties," his accountant advised. "Absolutely not," Chief Nwosu replied. "I don't sell. I acquire. There has to be another way." That's when Kemi suggested Unity Bank. They are known for large commercial loans, sir, and they are aggressive about expanding their client base. Chief Nwosu's first meeting with Unity Bank was with a junior loan officer who was clearly impressed by his portfolio. The young man practically drooled over the list of properties, the photographs of luxury cars, the financial statements that looked impressive on paper. "This should be no problem, Chief Nwosu. With your assets, you are exactly the kind of client we want to work with." But when the loan reached the commercial lending department for final approval, it landed on Mercy's desk. She stared at the name on the application, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Chief Emeka Nwosu, 12 properties in Lagos, requesting 45 million naira for business expansion and cash flow management. Mercy's hands trembled as she opened the file. There he was in the photograph attached to his application, older now with more grey in his hair, but unmistakably the same man who had thrown her and Chioma into the streets on Christmas Eve. She spent the next week conducting the most thorough investigation of her career. She contacted his tenants, his suppliers, his business partners. She analyzed his cash flow, his debt-to-income ratio, his payment history with other creditors. What she found was a man who was leveraged to the hilt, behind on multiple payments, and rapidly running out of options. More importantly, she found something else. 3 other tenants who had been evicted under similar circumstances. A young couple thrown out 2 days before their wedding because they were short on rent. An elderly man evicted during his wife's funeral because he couldn't pay while dealing with medical bills. A family with special needs children forced onto the streets because the father had been hospitalized. The pattern was clear. Chief Nwosu was a predator who preyed on people in vulnerable situations. He had built his wealth on the backs of people who had nowhere else to turn. Mercy made her decision, but she wanted to do this right. She wanted to give him exactly what he had given her: a chance to beg, to plead, to explain, and then she wanted to watch him realize that his cruelty had consequences. She approved the meeting request. Chief Nwosu would come to her office, just as she had once come to his. The only difference was that this time she held all the power. The morning of the meeting, Mercy dressed carefully. She chose a navy blue suit, not unlike the one she had worn to his office that terrible day in December 2021. But this suit was new, perfectly tailored, made of the finest fabric. She looked like what she had become, a woman of power, dignity, and unshakable confidence. Our assistant knocked on the door at exactly 10 a.m. Mrs. Ejiofor, Chief Nwosu is here for his appointment. Send him in. Chief Nwosu strode into her office with the same arrogance he had always carried, but Mercy could see the cracks in his facade. His suit was expensive but slightly wrinkled. His shoes were polished but worn. His smile was confident, but his eyes betrayed desperation. Mrs. Ejiofor, thank you for seeing me, he said, extending his hand. I am Chief Emeka Nwosu. Mercy looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment before shaking it briefly. Please, have a seat, Chief Nwosu. He settled into the chair across from her desk, his eyes taking in the impressive office, the awards on the wall, the view of Victoria Island, the obvious markers of success and authority. I have to say, I am impressed, he said, trying to establish rapport. It's refreshing to see a young woman in such a position and responsibility. Your parents must be very proud. Mercy's expression didn't change. My parents are dead, Chief Nwosu. They died in a car accident 6 years ago. The comment hung in the air awkwardly. Chief Nwosu cleared his throat. I am sorry to hear that, but I am sure they would be proud if they were here. Mercy opened his file deliberately, her movement slow and methodical. Let's discuss your loan application. You are requesting 45 million naira for business expansion and cash flow management. That is correct. As you can see from my portfolio, I have substantial assets, 12 properties, all in prime locations. Yes, I have reviewed your assets, Mercy interrupted. I have also reviewed your liabilities. Your debt-to-income ratio is concerning. Chief Nwosu's confidence faltered slightly. Well, yes, I have had some temporary cash flow issues. The real estate market, but my properties are solid investments. Chief Nwosu, according to our investigation, you are behind on mortgage payments for 4 of your properties. You have defaulted on 2 vehicle loans and you have outstanding debts with 3 different suppliers. Those are temporary setbacks. Nothing about your financial situation appears temporary. Mercy's voice was calm, professional, devastating. In fact, our analysis suggests that without immediate capital injection, you will be bankrupt within 6 months. Chief Nwosu's mask slipped completely. That's why I need this loan, to stabilize my situation. I see. And what makes you think Unity Bank should take such a significant risk on someone with your financial profile? My assets, my properties alone are worth more than the loan amount. Mercy leaned back in her chair. Chief Nwosu, banks don't just look at assets. We look at character. We look at how people conduct themselves when they think no one is watching. Something in her tone made Chief Nwosu's eyes narrow. What do you mean by that? I mean that we have spoken to your tenants. All of them. The color drained from Chief Nwosu's face. We have heard some interesting stories, Mercy continued, about evictions on Christmas Eve, about families thrown into the streets during medical emergencies, about a pattern of behavior that suggests a concerning lack of empathy for people in vulnerable situations. Now, wait just a minute. No, Chief Nwosu, you wait. Mercy's voice cut through his protest like a blade. You see, banks have to be very careful about who we lend money to. We can't just look at financial statements. We have to consider moral character. Chief Nwosu was sweating now, despite the air conditioning. Mr. Jofo, surely you understand that business sometimes requires difficult decisions. Difficult decisions. Is that what you call throwing a single mother and a sick child into the street on Christmas Eve? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Chief Nwosu's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. December 24th, 2021, Mercy continued, her voice steady as steel. A woman came to your office, begging for a 4-day extension on her rent. She explained that she was expecting payment from a client. She pleaded with you to show mercy, especially since it was Christmas Eve. Chief Nwosu's widened in recognition and horror. Do you remember what you told her, Chief Nwosu? I don't. You said, Christmas is not my problem. If she cared about her daughter, she would have made sure she could pay her rent. Chief Nwosu was shaking now. Who told you about that? Mercy stood up slowly, her presence filling the room with quiet authority. She told me, because that woman was me. The silence in the room was deafening. Chief Nwosu stared at her in shock. His mind racing to connect the desperate woman in his office 2 years ago with the powerful bank executive sitting across from him now. That sick child you threw into the street, she was my daughter, Chioma. She was 8 years old, running a fever, and you made us pack our belongings in the rain on Christmas Eve. Mrs. Ejiofor, I had no idea. You had no idea because you never saw me as a person. I was just a source of revenue to you, a number in your ledger. Chief Nwosu tried to speak, but no words came out. Do you know what happened to us that night? Mercy asked. We went to live with an elderly widow in a one-room apartment. My daughter slept on the floor for 3 months. She asked me every day when we would go home, and I had to tell her that we didn't have a home anymore. Please, Mrs. Ejiofor, but you know what? You did me a favor that night. You showed me exactly who I never wanted to become. You showed me what heartless cruelty looks like, and you motivated me to make sure I would never be powerless again. Mercy walked around her desk, standing directly in front of him. I went back to school. I worked 3 jobs. I studied every night after my daughter went to sleep. I built myself into someone who could sit where you are sitting now and decide whether people get the help they need. Chief Nwosu looked up at her with desperate eyes. Mrs. Ejiofor, please, I know I made mistakes. I know I was harsh, but I am begging you. You are begging me? Mercy's voice carried the weight of every sleepless night, every moment of desperation, every tear her daughter had shed. How does it feel, Chief Nwosu? How How does it feel to be powerless? To have your future decided by someone who sees you as nothing more than a risk assessment? Please, I have a family too. I have children. Your children won't be sleeping on the floor of a stranger's apartment tonight. Your children won't be asking why daddy can't pay the bills. Your children won't be learning what it means to be thrown away by society. Mercy returned to her chair, her movements calm and deliberate. But I am not you, Chief Nwosu. I don't make decisions based on cruelty or revenge. I make decisions based on facts and sound banking principles. She opened his file again. The facts are these. You are a high-risk borrower with a history of financial mismanagement and a documented pattern of unethical behavior. Unity Bank cannot, in good conscience, approve your loan application. No, please. There has to be something. There is something, Mercy said quietly. There is a lesson. The same lesson you taught me on Christmas Eve 2021. Actions have consequences. Cruelty has a price, and sometimes, Chief Nwosu, that price comes due when you least expect it. She closed the file with finality. Your loan application is denied. Chief Nwosu sat in stunned silence. For a long moment, the weight of his situation crashing down on him. What am I supposed to do now? Mercy looked at him with something that might have been pity. I suggest you learn to show compassion to others because someday, Chief, you might find yourself in their position, and when that day comes, you will hope they are more merciful than you were. Security escorted Chief Nwosu from the building, just as they had escorted Mercy from his office 2 years before. But unlike Mercy, he had no plan, no determination, no inner fire to rebuild. He had spent so many years being cruel that he had forgotten how to inspire loyalty or compassion in others. Within 4 months, Chief Nwosu had lost 6 of his 12 properties to foreclosure. His luxury cars were repossessed. His expensive lifestyle crumbled like a house of cards. The man who had once wielded power over desperate tenants found himself desperate and powerless. Meanwhile, Mercy's career continued to flourish. Her decision regarding Chief Nwosu's loan became something of a legend within Unity Bank. Not because of the personal connection, which she kept private, but because of the thoroughness of her investigation and the soundness of her reasoning. She had prevented the bank from making a catastrophic loan to someone who would eventually default. 6 months later, Mercy received a promotion to regional manager. Her office moved to the top floor with a panoramic view of Lagos. On the wall behind her desk, she hung a photo of herself and Chioma from their first Christmas in their new apartment. Both of them smiling, both of them free. One evening, as she was working late, her assistant knocked on her door. "Mrs. Ejiofor, there is someone here to see you. He says it's personal." Mercy looked up to see Chief Nwosu standing in her doorway. But this wasn't the arrogant man who had swaggered into her office 3 months earlier. This was a broken man, his expensive clothes replaced by a simple shirt and trousers, his confident demeanor replaced by the slumped shoulders of defeat. "Mrs. Ejiofor, I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to apologize." Mercy gestured to the chair across from her table. "Sit down, Chief Nwosu." He sat heavily, his hands shaking slightly. I've lost everything, he said quietly. My properties, my cars, my reputation. My wife has left me. My children barely speak to me. Mercy listened without comment. I have been thinking about what you said, about compassion, about how I treated people when I had power. He looked up at her with eyes full of genuine remorse. I was cruel, Mrs. Ejiofor. I was cruel to you and to so many others. I told myself it was just business, but it wasn't. It was cruelty. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that I understand now. I understand what it feels like to be powerless, to have nowhere to turn, to depend on the mercy of others. And I understand that the way I treated people was wrong. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 2 years and two very different journeys hanging between them. I am not asking for your forgiveness, Chief Okonkwo continued. I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that what happened to you and your daughter on Christmas Eve, it haunts me. It haunts me every single day. Mercy studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, she saw genuine remorse, the kind that only comes from truly understanding the pain you have caused others. Chief Okonkwo, she said finally, I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger is like carrying poison. It destroys you from the inside. He looked up at her in surprise. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, she continued. You made choices that hurt people. Those choices led you to where you are now. That is not revenge. That is just life. I know, and I can accept that. He stood up slowly. I just wanted you to know that you were right about me. I was a monster, but maybe it is not too late for me to become something better. After he left, Mercy sat alone in her office, looking out at the city light of Lagos. Somewhere out there, thousands of people were struggling just as she had struggled. Some of them would find their way to better lives, and some of them wouldn't. The difference she had learned wasn't just about talent or luck or even hard work. It was about the choices people made when they had power over others. She pulled out her phone and called Chioma, who was now 12 years old and thriving in one of Lagos' best private schools. Mommy, you are working late again. Just finishing up on some things, sweetheart. How was school today? Good. We are learning about justice in social studies class. Our teacher says justice isn't about revenge. It is about making things right. Mercy smiled. Your teacher sounds very wise. Mommy, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you remember when we had to move from our old apartment? When I was little? Mercy's breath caught. Yes, I remember. I've been thinking about it lately. Were you scared? Mercy considered her answer carefully. Yes, baby, I was terrified. But being scared doesn't mean being helpless. Sometimes, being scared motivates us to become stronger. Is that why you work so hard? To make sure we are never scared like that again? That's part of it. But mostly, I work hard because I want to help other people who are scared. I want to make sure that when people need help, someone with power chooses to be kind instead of cruel. I want to do that when I grow up. You already do that, Chioma. Every day, when you choose to be kind to others, you are making the world a little bit better. After they hung up, Mercy looked at the photo on her desk. Herself and Chioma, smiling in their new apartment. They had come so far from that terrible Christmas Eve. But the journey had taught them both something invaluable, that true strength comes not from power to hurt others, but from the choice to help them. 2 years later, Mercy Ejiofor was appointed Executive Vice President of Unity Bank, making her one of the youngest and most powerful banking executives in Nigeria. Her success story became legendary. The single mother who had risen from eviction to the executive suite through determination, intelligence, and unwavering integrity. But perhaps more importantly, she used her position to implement new policies that protected vulnerable borrowers and ensured that banks' lending practices were both profitable and ethical. She established a hardship program that gave struggling borrowers realistic options for maintaining their homes and businesses. She created mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs who needed not just capital but guidance and support. Chief Nwosu, meanwhile, had found work as a janitor in a small office building. It was humbling work but honest work. He had learned to take pride in small things: a clean floor, a properly maintained restroom, a kind word to the people who worked in the building. Some of his former peers mocked his fall from grace, but he had discovered something he had never experienced before: peace of mind that comes from knowing you are hurting no one. One evening, as Mercy was leaving her office, she encountered Chief Nwosu in the parking garage. He was finishing his shift, pushing a cart of cleaning supplies to his old dented car. "Mrs. Ejiofor," he said, nodding respectfully. "Chief Nwosu, how are you?" "I am well, thank you. Tired but well." He paused. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. You deserve it." "Thank you." They stood there for a moment. Two people whose lives had intersected in the most dramatic way possible. "Mrs. Ejiofor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about that night? Christmas Eve?" Mercy considered the question. "Sometimes, but not with anger anymore. I think about it as the night that changed everything. The night I decided who I wanted to become." Chief Nwosu nodded slowly. "For me, it was the night I revealed who I really was, and I don't like what I saw." "But people can change, Chief Nwosu. Every day is a chance to be better than you were yesterday." "I'm trying, Mrs. Ejiofor. Every day I am trying." As they parted ways, Mercy reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them both to this moment. The man who had once held absolute power over her life was now just another person trying to make an honest living. And she, the woman he had once dismissed as worthless, now held the kind of power he had once held. But the most important lesson of all was this: true power doesn't come from the ability to crush others. It comes from the wisdom to lift them up. It comes from understanding that every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about. And it comes from choosing every single day to be the kind of person who makes the world a little bit kinder, a little bit more just, and a little bit more hopeful. As Mercy drove to Chioma that evening, she thought about the story she would someday tell her daughter about Christmas Eve 2021. Not as a story of victimization, but as a story of transformation. not as a tale of revenge, but as a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and the belief that no matter how dark things get, there is always a path forward for those brave enough to take it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living. Sometimes justice comes not from punishment, but from proving that cruelty cannot break the human spirit. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show others that there is always hope. The rain had stopped falling in Lagos and the sun was beginning to shine. Thank you for joining us for this incredible story of resilience, justice, and the power of never giving up. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their current situation is not their final destination. Remember, every setback is a setup for a comeback, and God's timing is always perfect. Until next time, keep believing in yourself and never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve better. Your breakthrough is coming.